Home Affairs is yet to comply with a court order instructing it to release blocked IDs on suspicion of fraud. The court has found that the department didn't follow proper procedure and therefore it was unlawful. Close to 700,000 IDs have been impacted, and that means 700,000 people. Joining us this afternoon is Thandeka Chauke. She is with Lawyers for Human Rights, the manager of the Statelessness Project at that organization. Thandeka, thanks very much for coming onto the program. Why the delay, as far as you know, in terms of Home Affairs complying with this court order?
Thank you for having me. So we have not heard any communication from their legal representative, which is the state attorney, as to why the department has not complied. They had been given 90 days to deal with the list that Lawyers for Human Rights as well as LegalWise had submitted to Home Affairs in February. And those 90 days lapsed last week, in fact, this week on Monday, the 24th of June, no, last week.
Yeah, and I mean, the way people found out about this as well, there are people who went to go and renew their passports only to discover their IDs were blocked, people who were picking up their IDs, but instead they received letters notifying them that they're being investigated. In terms of how this is meant to work, Thandeka, if indeed there is an investigation of this nature, surely I can't be finding out just on a whim.
Exactly. And that is what the court has stated in the judgment, that the department does need to abide by the principles of administrative justice, and what the PAJA Act requires of them is to, in fact, inform people of a decision that has been made against them, especially decisions that have an adverse effect on the person. So with blocking IDs, would find that many of our clients would have walked into the bank, would have tried to renew their driver's license or passport, and then find out almost by mistake that their ID has in fact been invalidated. And what would follow after that is that you're not even given reasons. So you would have to do all the investigations for yourself to kind of figure out why the ID has been unblocked, and then to try and get assistance from the department has also proven very difficult for many of our clients. Some of the oldest cases date back at least to the early 2000s. So you can just imagine what life has become for people that are in this position.
Well, let's not assume what this means for people who have been in this position for as many years as you say. What does it mean for your ID to be blocked? Not for weeks, months, but for years.
So some people might remember a few years ago when a man who had issues with his documentation had actually set himself on fire outside the Department of Home Affairs, because for him, life would be basically unbearable without documentation. And I think that's just an example of the kind of grief and stress that brings out a person who can't have access to identity documentation. So you can imagine all the things that you access on a daily basis with your ID, all the buildings that you can access, the services online. People with blocked IDs cannot do that. And I think what's also worse is that it goes beyond the individual to also impact on families. So you have those who are parents who have been put out of a job and therefore have no means to look after their families. Those who have struggled to register their children, and now the children have inherited these issues with documentation. And then there's a psychosocial aspect, which I spoke about in the beginning.
Yeah.
And so it's really, it's a grave injustice to the people that are impacted, and something that deserves the urgent attention of the Department of Home Affairs.
Absolutely. And when we talk urgent, right, it's a bit late for urgency now, because you talked about some cases dating back to the early 2000s.
So I would argue that issues of documentation are inherently urgent, simply because of the many uses of an ID document. What I was pointing out to say, on a daily basis, people use their documents to interact with government services, with economic services, with banks, and to do basic administration. So it's inherently urgent, and it remains urgent even for those who have been blocked for more than a decade now. And now with the court order, that also places a timeline on the department to comply, because without compliance, it effectively means that the minister and the DG are in contempt of the court order and could be liable to committal to prison because of this non-compliance with the court order.
Yeah, certainly. Not to just make light of the job that Home Affairs also has at hand, right? There are certainly legitimate instances where this kind of investigation is warranted. And this is the work of Home Affairs when we ask that our government departments act and that they do the jobs that they are tasked with. This is one of the things that Home Affairs, I imagine, routinely will have to do.
Yes, and indeed we've acknowledged that the Department of Home Affairs may have legitimacy security concerns. It is within their mandate to be able to monitor the National Population Register and to be able to have an understanding, an accurate record of who is in the country, who is not, who is leaving, and who is coming in. But these processes still have to be subject to what the PAJA Act requires of them. So there does still need to be principles of administrative justice. We have argued or put before the court that what the department needs to do is to go back and look at its SOPs, look at its internal policies and its practices to see that within that it infuses these safeguards of due process. Because at least if the person knows, you're given notice that we've picked up something, an error or an irregularity with the ID, they can then respond to that and then, clear it up with the Department of Home Affairs. But even an analogy that came out in the judgment is, for instance, a criminal. Or a suspected criminal, at least. When you're arrested, you have the right to be informed of your charges before, and the right to be presumed innocent before proven guilty, and then to be convicted. But what is happening with blocked ID victims is that they're being found guilty even before there's any sort of investigation. It's simply based on suspicion or the whim of the particular official who you're interacting with in that occasion.
Do you have any clarity in terms of the clients that you have, where they're certainly just based on the evidence you've been able to look through as your organization, where there's no evidence pointing to the fact that this ID should be blocked? Has it been an easy thing for them to resolve?
So that is exactly the gripe, that people don't know why their IDs are blocked. Their IDs have been blocked based on suspicion, and when people walk into the Home Affairs offices, they're not given straight or clear answers. We are aware that the department has now been issuing what they call PAJA letters to some of the blocked ID victims. But even these letters don't state the reason for the blockage on the ID. It simply says that your ID is under investigation, and if you don't come and make representations within 14 days, we're going to cancel it. Once again, that is not administrative justice, and it's not in compliance with what the court has stated. So I think there is a need for Home Affairs to revisit its policies to ensure that there aren't, these implications for innocent people, really.
I want to say, Thandeka, that there's certainly a basis for the entire process to be streamlined to the point where all of these kinds of disputes and questions around identity go online, right? But obviously we know as a country we just don't have the kind of infrastructure that allows us, infrastructure and access that allows us to do that.
Yes, indeed. And I think just a general kind of issue with the department has been service delivery. And I think people are hopeful with the new administration or the new minister that would be a priority for him to look at service delivery at Home Affairs and to see how we can improve the system to become more efficient so that it actually serves the people.
So what's the way forward here for Lawyers for Human Rights? These IDs still remain blocked. The department has not complied with a court order. In fact, the 90-day period, as you say, lapsed on the 24th of June. What now? What's the next step in terms of your organization?
Well, part of the judgment part of the order includes a supervisory order, which means that the court maintains jurisdiction over compliance with the court order in terms of its content as well with the timelines. So we are able to approach the court once again to raise grievances that we have now with this lack of compliance and to get an understanding of what challenges the Department of Home Affairs is experiencing with compliance in order for us to make sure that, the victims actually receive true justice. In the interim, we have been receiving increasing numbers of people who continue to need help with blocked IDs. We already have close to 150 clients that we have represented in the court application. And since the judgment was issued in January, we've been approached by at least over 100 more people that are still seeking help with this particular issue. And so we do hope that, the department is responsive to these issues and that we might be able to reach some sort of amicable resolution. But even going forward, that this trend or pattern of non-compliance with court orders, which we have seen in recent years, is something that is also addressed by the Department of Home Affairs.
What is your advice, Thandeka, for someone who is still grappling with this? what should be my next steps outside of approaching Lawyers for Human Rights? What should I do?
I think it's important for people to continue to raise awareness about this issue. We have launched a campaign under the hashtag Unblock My ID, Unlock My Life, in which we share some of the testimonials of people that are going through this issue. Because it is only through awareness raising that we can then pick up that there's something systemically and horribly wrong at the Department of Home Affairs. And I think people should continue to call the department to account. It is a government department. It owes the people accountability and transparency, and it owes the people efficient public services.
Yeah, absolutely. Thandeka Chauke, let me thank you for your time this afternoon. She's the manager of the Statelessness Project at Lawyers for Human Rights.